DJ LeRoy.
Night Watchman, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. It was an interesting week last week. I understand that that no one is above the law. Is that correct?
That's what they say.
Wow, wow. So, well, I know you're not going to make any predictions, but can you say at least a modicum of justice has been realized, or what?
Well, I'll feel that justice is realized when somebody is behind bars, and I'm not
Wow,
gonna.
wow. You got
But
to go all in, huh?
well,
Okay, okay. Anyway, speaking of justice, what about environmental justice? What about that, man?
let's talk about that. As a certain animated frog on a certain TV series said, "It's not easy being green."
Ooh, wow, wow, you went there. Okay, so yes, let's bring out some stuff, and we're not necessarily going to call them tree huggers, or can we call them tree huggers? I guess we're gonna
That
find
was
out,
your
right?
words. Just so when they take the transcript, you know, you know,
Okay.
I want to make a clear definition that on this side.
Okay, okay, then fine. You know what? I'm definitely
Well,
gonna.
let me ask you this: have you never
Okay.
hugged a tree?
Only when I.
Maybe you should try it. It could change your life.
Night Watchman, you said you've never evolved, so why should I even try?
Well,
A tree huggers. So on
I
that
try.
note,
I
man.
try to be a role model for you, but it hasn't worked out so far.
No, it really hasn't. It hasn't. So you know what? I'm going to get it popping because there is somebody I'm going to give some major props to, because I would say that with her tenacity, her grit, and determination, she made this show happen.
Hmm.
That could only be Olivia Keenan. Bring her out. Hey,
Hello. Thanks for having me.
absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a pre-med student from, oh my God, remember the Milwaukee Bucks? She's from Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I stupefied Night Watchman. He didn't say anything. So anyway, so but you have other members of the team here. So
Yes.
we got to have Dr. Arnab Ghosh, a doctor and researcher on climate and its effect on health. Man, yes.
Nice to meet you.
Oh man, absolutely. And did I pronounce the last name correctly?
Yeah, perfectly. I didn't put it up on my little name tag, but yes, you did.
Perfect. And then, last but not least, from that team coming out of Cornell, yes, I did the Ivy League vet. Okay, there you go, Night Watchman. Aalayna Green, bring her out. Yes.
Right. Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Now, as a matter of fact, I never asked. So, Aalayna, where are you from? Are you from the Big Apple or somewhere like Milwaukee?
I'm from Michigan, so kind of in between.
Okay, I like this. Night Watchman. I was struggling for a little bit, man. I was trying to say, yo, we got to have WEAC. If we're talking about environmental health, man, and we're especially, I'm here in West Harlem, you're in Central Harlem. We need WEAC in this bad boy. So why don't we bring out Cameron Clarke? What's up?
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, Night Watchman, I think I definitely want to get it popping. So, why don't we start up with Olivia? You got to tell me, and how did this research and why this particular research in terms of tree planting? Please elaborate.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Well, I first wanted to say that I think that I'm definitely a tree hugger, and I feel as though the people on our team are too. So I think, Curtis, you do need to go out today and hug a tree and see how that changes your life.
See, Night Watchman, what you started here? Jeez, man. Anyway,
take advice from people who know.
Yeah.
So tell us about this particular research in Northern Manhattan, or is it specifically Harlem and other parts around?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. And so, this project started with my boss, Arnab Ghosh, so he can probably speak to it a little bit more after me.
Okay,
but
absolutely.
so we're looking at the best trees to plant and the best places to plant them in order to help with heat-related health issues. And a big part of that is asking people in New York City communities how they feel about trees and also how they feel about heat and how they navigate heat in the summers, especially since I'm sure you all have been able to tell in this past winter, but in also the past summers, it's been getting hotter and hotter. And the people we've been talking to have felt that way as well. So we know it's a topical conversation. But to answer your question about who we're talking with in New York, we've kind of been doing like a snowball effect. I think we're all new to the community engagement aspect of research because, as you said, we're from Cornell. We're kind of these like academic people. So far, the only communities that we've talked with so far have been Harlemites. So it's kind of just been the way the snowball effect of networking has gone for us so far, but we definitely want to expand to other parts of the city, in particular neighborhoods in Brooklyn, potentially neighborhoods in the South Bronx. And I'll also mention that the reason that we are targeting these neighborhoods is because they are more heat vulnerable in the summers compared to other neighborhoods in the city. So we want to get the perspectives of the folks who live there. We want to get their perspectives the most. But definitely, I would love if Arnab could speak a little bit more towards the project, since it is his idea.
So I did not know, Arnab, that you had the big brain here, huh?
No. It's a joint effort, and we all work together. I'm a self-declared tree hugger, but I think the politically correct term is tree enthusiast.
I like that. I like that.
I like this. Okay. So do tell us. I mean, literally now. And I think, Arnab, we basically spoke because, my son works in city administration, and I had called him when I saw this particular episode about, I guess it was Astoria, that they had planted some trees,
That's
but
right.
in the middle of the sidewalk, and it did not go over well. So Arnab, like, yo, talk to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, one part, we think that trees can be very helpful, and they can be helpful in a lot of different ways, but you have to be thoughtful about how and where you plant them. And also, we think what sort of tree you want to plant matters, because certain trees cool more than others. We also worry about things like air pollution. Like last year, that smoke haze that hit from the wildfires up north, trees can be helpful in that regard as well. But trees aren't going to be helpful if you plant them in the middle of the sidewalk. They're just not. It's very unfortunate that, but actually quite emblematic of the issues that we face. Trees can be wonderful friends of ours. They're a nature-based solution. Instead of trying to put an air conditioner in and dealing with the consequences of, the cost of doing that, the energy cost, etc., planting trees in your neighborhood can actively cool. And if you look after them, they can maintain that cooling environment. But we know that trees can also cause some trouble. And so we have to think carefully about how to do that. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I tend to go around the neighborhood with my stroller. And we know that sometimes trees can uproot the pavement, for example. So
yes.
Like that. And not more than once. My 2-year-old's almost been flung out because, you hit the edge of pavement there. So these are things that we have to worry about in tree planting. So there are a variety of things that we think trees can do to help us. We have to be thoughtful about how and where to plant them and what sort of trees. And so our research is really is trying to understand that from the perspective of the communities, from the perspective of the folks who plant the trees in the city, and also trying to figure out which ones are going to give the most benefit for our health.
Gotcha. And you know what? I'm wondering, NightWatchman, whether or not we have a trifecta here. Okay, so I'm about to check on Aalayna, and she's going to let me know. Are you also a tree hugger? What's going on here?
Tree enthusiast.
I think at the end of the day, all of us are not only tree people, but we have a really deep care for people. And that's kind of what brought us to this work, is that we care for our own communities and care for communities that we're not a part of. Because I'm not from the city, but I care about how people are affected by these types of extreme heat and like urban greening impacts, because this affects people at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And you know what? So I think I have known WEAC for a lot of years. I do remember when we had the North River sewage treatment facility move into West Harlem, right? Oh, and you know what? Night Watchman, the community, we got a benefit. We got a park on top of it. Hey, so now 25 years later, when they've analyzed the young kids, why are those kids' heads glowing? So Cameron, do tell, man, do tell. WEAC and its impact, and especially being that I did not know in terms of the greening of the community that you guys were also doing some direct intervention. Tell me, man.
Absolutely, and hopefully, when that study comes out, hopefully it's not going to be looking at all the different third eyes and extra eyes. We've been around since the 80s, which is a little bit before my time, but we've been working around climate justice and environmental justice. And one of the things that we saw, if you were here in 2017, if you were here in 2021, if you're here honestly every time it's even a light drizzle, that the subways tend to flood. You see like pools of water all along the one train, especially up around here in Central and West Harlem. And one of the things that we sort of wanted to do for our community is we wanted to sort of create a program to help them become more resilient to some of the natural disasters that we're seeing coming increasingly frequently in our community. So, we actually partnered with East Harlem Co-ed and with Harlem Emergency Network, which I think you all are probably already familiar with.
Night Watchman, yep, that's right.
And we created this thing called the Climate Ready Uptown Plan. And what it is, it's a glorified map, but what it does is it shows folks exactly where it's likely to flood. All throughout northern Manhattan. So where it's like we see flooding from, the East River rising, and also where we see sort of flash flooding from sort of heavy rains and some of the torrential downpours that we tend to see, during the summer and the fall. And so we wanted to do this so that we could give community members the ability to prepare themselves and prepare their families so that they know where they should go, where they probably shouldn't go in the event of extreme weather like that.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. And also now, okay, so true. I don't smell the sewage treatment facility because remember when that first came online, it was unbearable here in West Harlem. So that means that, of course, the effects of the sewage treatment facility are no longer apparent. But so it's not doing anything to my health, correct?
So it's actually interesting because one of the things that happens when you have a city that has sort of like a sewage system that's as old as New York's is essentially every time it rains or every time there's a heavy rain, the sewage treatment normally it's operating at like a decent percentage of capacity, but every time there's a heavy rain, essentially it'll overflow. And so that's the times when you see those advisories to like, don't go in the Hudson River, which, personally, I'm never going. I'm never in that water. But, that's when the sewage treatment plant, when it spills and when it overflows, then it starts to dump sort of raw sewage into northern. So it's, there's larger, more systemic issues that are at play. And, definitely there's research that needs to be done on sort of the impact of, having that plant in our environment. But there's work that we can do sort of in the interim to prepare folks for, some of the things that Olivia was talking about, the impacts of extreme heat and how we can help keep our communities safe from some of those, more immediate hazards, as well as some of the challenges that we're facing around sort of pollution and sewage in our community.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Night Watchman, what you got for me, man?
Well, I have a term for you. I don't know if you're familiar with the term forest bathing.
Okay, Olivia.
I am
I'm
familiar.
asking you,
Okay.
Mister.
No, I want to hear
You.
Olivia's. Go ahead. What is it,
She
Olivia?
knows. I'm sure she knows what it is.
I don't want to take away the stage if NightWatchman wants to say.
So, so they've done research to when you spend time in wooded areas, you actually there are some great physiological and psychological benefits, and that's called forest bathing. And so it's something that as urban dwellers, we don't have an opportunity to do it as much as people who live in the suburbs or rural areas. And that's why the green spaces such as parks that we have are so important. And it's important to spend time in those areas, and there are physiological and psychological benefits. So I thought I wanted to add that to your new lexicon, along with tree enthusiasts.
Okay, see, this is like Arnab. This is what I go through every week, But I love him nonetheless. So, Olivia, please tell me.
You're gonna learn today.
Tell me, why is it so important for the health of a community in terms of trees and the planting of trees? Just, give me a little nutshell. Because when you first approached, I said, I'm not sure how Harlem will take to this, but do
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah, great question. And about the forest bathing, that was a great definition. And I will say, because I'm a tree enthusiast, I've looked into forest bathing opportunities in the city, and there are some of the, I think, the Botanic Gardens, the New York Botanic Gardens up in the Bronx has some guided forest bathing sessions. But one thing I will say is I think they cost money, which I think is a little, I don't know, annoying. But anyways, to answer your question about why trees are important for our health, and I'll say that we've found through both reading like papers about it and articles, but also speaking with people, that trees seem to help with the health of you in like every way, whether it's your emotional health, your mental health, your physical health. I think I'll speak first to mental health, since I think we were talking a little bit about that already. We've read a lot of papers saying that in areas that have more tree cover, there is often lower rates of depression and anxiety and those sort of mental health issues. And I think that's also really been made even more clear post-COVID, because during COVID, as I'm sure you all remember, we were forced to either be inside or go to parks and like social distance from people. But those parks became such a more important part of the urban landscape for people to like have a place that was peaceful and not in their home and kind of breathe in fresh air. So I think we've also seen that trees have been even more important for mental health in the years following COVID, and that people are noticing that more too. Then physical health wise, our project is specifically focused on heat-related health impacts. So we know that trees provide cooling through shade, which I think anyone knows just subconsciously. Like when you're walking down the street on a hot day, you'll probably try to go to the side that is tree lined, so you're and have a bit of reprieve from the hot sun. But there's also physical health benefits that we found, such as air quality benefits. So trees filtering the air and making the air safer and better to breathe. Probably you notice that too, just going out of the city sometimes and being in a forest further away, maybe upstate or in Wisconsin, there's forests. And so, once again, that's another health benefit. And then other health benefits, I think this one is more indirect, but Cameron, I really liked how you mentioned I don't like that this happens, but you mentioned the flooding that is occurring in the city, and trees also are able to help with stormwater runoff. And I think you can imagine when a lot of water comes into a city, one reason that flooding can be worse in cities is because there's nowhere for the water to go. It just is kind of sitting on concrete. But when there's more trees, more greenery, the water is able to go down and kind of go into the earth in the way it's supposed to. And so I think trees can indirectly help with health in that way as well, because flooding also has its health effects, adverse health effects for folks who are around it. I kind of listed off a bunch of things there, but I'm sure other people may have more things to add related to health, but that's my spiel.
Well, thank you for that. And of course, then I have to go to Dr. Tree Enthusiast, Arnab. So, A, taking your young children, do you go to forest bathing? Do you enjoy the parks of New York? You got to tell me, man.
We do. We were at the Botanical Gardens last week, actually, because you know, my kids want to run around. It's hard to do that in the busy streets of New York City, and so I just kind of let them loose, and they just run off and they really enjoy that. And we feel it's an important part. They're I wouldn't say they're tree enthusiasts just yet, but I'm definitely pushing them that way. They'll definitely hug a tree very, very soon. But you know, it speaks. I think Olivia gave a great answer, and being able to get out and feel comfortable and run around, those are health benefits in themselves. It's not sitting around at home, and those lead to, you know, those opportunities lead to improved health. You think about heart health, you think about your health of your lungs, etc. So all those things are helpful.
Well, Arna, when you first were going into the medical practice now, were you always looking at climate and its effects on our health, or what? Tell me.
I'd have to say no. You probably get a sense that I have a bit of an accent, and I'm originally, or I like to say everyone has an accent. I'm originally from Australia, and Australia has been hit hard by a lot of climate problems, like the wildfires, the smoke, excessive flooding, extreme heat. And I think the first time I really experienced this, I was a doctor working in an ER, and we experienced one of the worst wildfires. We call them bushfires in Australia, in Australian history. And I was working in a hospital where we accepted a lot of the patients who unfortunately had, been affected by those bushfires. And it really, for me, hit home, the effects. And, you know, I was in New York City. I've been here for a little while. I was here when Hurricane Sandy hit.
Oh, wow.
I was working at Bellevue, where I did my residency, and I saw what happened to the hospital system then, what happened to my patients. I subsequently was in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes hit. So, I think these are problems that are not going to go away. And I think we have to be serious about trying to help our communities deal and become resilient to them. And that's part of the reason why I got involved in this.
Gotcha. And Aalayna, so you did mention in terms of, let's say, in Michigan, you're not in an urban area, or do tell me where, and also what attracted you to this research?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up 30 minutes south of Flint, and grew up during the entirety of the Flint water crisis. So it was always very apparent. And like we even had bottled water drives at my elementary school.
So you're telling me that Poland probably set up a plant right there, huh?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so environmental issues and environmental justice has always been a part of my life. And that was something that drove me to go to graduate school and to kind of study this for a living. And a lot of times when we consider the effects of how trees and how like simple solutions like trees, or quote unquote simple solutions, can fix so many people and so many communities, it's impossible not to do something. And I think that's what brought me to this project, is that this is a real tangible solution that can have really big, long-lasting impacts on people.
Nice. And certainly Cameron, man. Now, where you from originally, man?
So I'm from a little great state called New Jersey. Originally from Jersey City, so not crazy far. But yeah, like I've been in New York for the past 5 years, and my family's actually from Harlem. We were forced to camp to Jersey when the prices got high back in the 80s. But I think it's coming back to this community has been like so rich for me to be able to give back to folks that like raised my family in a sense. So I think it's been yeah, it's been incredibly beautiful to be able to contribute to, making sure that Harlem, which has been just, historically and even currently so, ignored by so many aspects of the city, and like, treated as a dumping ground sometimes for sewage treatment plants, for bus depots, for all the things that people don't want anywhere else in the city. They decide to put it uptown.
Absolutely. And Cameron, you got to know. Remember now, people
Yeah.
don't know this, that the North River Sewage Treatment Facility was initially supposed to be going downtown
Yep.
to where Trump did his development.
Yeah, and then it's a testament to the social and political capital of different communities, that some folks can decide we don't want that here, and their elected officials and their city officials will listen to them and be like, okay, we'll put it there. But when Harlem said we don't want that here, apparently that voice did not hold the same sway.
No.
So I think it's all the more important, to be talking about things like, things as simple as trees, because, we actually did a study like a couple years back with a group of students where we basically just went around the different neighborhoods uptown. We just did temperature measurements. And what we saw is that literally just from either side of Central Park, from East Harlem to the Upper West Side, we saw a 30-degree difference in like
wow,
that
incredible,
folks are experiencing, just because of the tree cover that they have in the Upper West Side that we don't have in East Harlem. And all that stuff is compounded because we have all the chronic diseases, the high cholesterol, the blood pressure, the asthma that's in our communities. All of those things make extreme heat worse for us. So we're more likely to suffer from from heat stroke, more likely to suffer from heat exhaustion and all of these illnesses, just by being in these hotter temperatures.
Gotcha. And NightWatchman, certainly, you like me, you are a man of a certain age, so you have certain chronic maladies, and so becoming a tree enthusiast.
Wait, hold it. First of all, you're older than me.
So now the world goes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead with your point. There's a point you're making. I don't want to be flippant because I know it's a good point.
Yes, I just wanted to. So being a tree enthusiast or hugger, you've been able to control some of these maladies. That's all.
Yes, absolutely. Because go ahead. So going back to forest bathing now, my history, which is interesting, is that I live close to St. Nicholas Park. I spent a lot of time there. Now, historically, I was born and as a young child was raised very close to St. Nicholas Park, and so I was probably where my
now. Go ahead, let me hear it.
So that's probably where my mom actually pushed me in the stroller. So there's kind of a connection that as an adult I end up living close by, and I like to spend time there, and that's where I do my quote unquote forest bathing, because it's a beautiful park and lots of trees, and you can walk around and people walk their dogs. And you actually have a connection to St. Nicholas Park as well. Curtis and I have always attended there's a summer day party called Sunday Sermon that happens in that park on occasion, and it's a great celebration, and we fill the park with people and music, and there's just something about being with grass and trees that's calming. You're getting oxygen directly from the trees. As I said, they've studied the physiological and psychological benefits of spending time there. And so that's it absolutely is something that I think has tremendous health benefits.
Oh, thank you for that, NightWatchman. That wasn't so hard, was it?
Nah, not at all.
Olivia, to you now, and you and I, we had our chuckle when we talked about that miss tree planting there in Queens.
Yeah.
So definitely you and your team have been, as they say, engaging folks, engaging the community, Also, now, have you guys also rolled up on any of the electeds or no? You tell me.
Not yet. We were hoping you could facilitate that. No.
Wow.
No, that, absolutely. That's what he's supposed to do. But I have, the question is, how do you approach? What are the actual mechanics of getting more trees into an area? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And something we haven't yet talked about our project is that we're not only talking to community members, but we're also talking to like urban foresters or tree professionals. So we're talking to the people that are making the decisions about which trees to plant in parks departments and in smaller conservancy groups. And so those people have shown us how incredibly complicated the process of planting trees actually is.
Wow.
And it also varies depending on where you want to plant a tree. Like, for example, planting a tree in a forest in a park is different than planting a tree in a landscaped area or a grassy area in a park. Or it's different than planting a tree in a street. And it's also different than planting a tree that is on a private property. So there's so many different places to plant trees and things to think about for doing that. I'll give the example of like a street tree, because that is when we've talked to, these are the true tree huggers. Like when we talk to these people, they're always, the way that they describe it, they're always like, those trees, like, we can't believe they even live on these streets. Like what they have, yeah, like it's just like really traumatic for them. That's the words they use, which is interesting. But yeah, so the street trees have to deal with so much trauma or so much like that they wouldn't have to deal with if they lived in a forest. Stuff like salt in the winters, or flooding, like I mentioned before, or wind. Because I don't know if you ever walk in the winter. Sometimes the wind, like the streets become like a wind tunnel. Yeah. And or they have to deal with shading from buildings, and they don't get a lot of sunlight. So there's just so many things to think about. Or also like the space that a tree has. I'm sure you've walked past a tree before and noticed how the roots like come right onto the sidewalk. And that isn't great for the tree. Like the tree should have as much space as it needs to extend its roots. And so it's amazing. Sometimes I see these trees where the roots are like, I don't know, like getting in between concrete and rocks, and it's still living. So it's amazing. But they think about these things because some trees really cannot deal with these conditions. And so they often have, I think the New York City Parks has a list of 25 to 30 tree species that are ideal for, that are ideal for the New York City conditions. So that is, they'll kind of look at that list and then look at a spot and be like, okay, this is a shaded area. This is an area where there's a lot of wind. We know that the salting trucks in the winter will come down here, and it can deal with high salt tolerance. And I'm also just listing these off the top of my head. I'm missing like dozens of other things to keep in mind. But yeah, so that's one reason why we're talking to these people as well, is because we want to hear about what communities feel about trees and what they want to see as far as urban greening goes in their neighborhoods. But we also understand that there are so many things to keep in mind for actually planting trees. And we want to make sure that trees survive, because if they don't survive, then the benefits that they provide the community won't happen.
Gotcha. No, that's good. That's good. And Arnab, certainly. Now, I love Harlem and Upper Manhattan, so yeah, that's my focus. But one of my men is my man Jan Lee there in Chinatown, who's actually a big activist fighting, let's say, a mega jail being planted right there. And with that, of course, the disruption, also taking away a lot of public space. Have you guys engaged with some of the other communities that are, let's say, targeted for so a negative impact, so to speak?
I think we have.
Well,
actually, it's funny because Olivia has spoken, I think, to Jan.
Okay.
And yeah, this is an issue that I think we'll have to deal with moving ahead as a community, as a city, where we have to recognize that climate change is making a lot of is going to increase the risk of, say, heat and flooding. And we need to protect some of these spaces to allow us to deal with some of the consequences of extreme heat and this flooding. And so keeping public spaces open and able to green them, maintaining the greening, which is a separate issue, an important issue, will be incredibly important. And this is not just public spaces that are being taken away from communities that are vulnerable. It's sort of protecting the ones that exist. And so this is an incredible issue that we're really just touching on at this point. But as we've grown as an organization, started to speak to more people, these issues have become clearer. And so some of our work has taken a bit of an advocacy perspective here.
Now, and one of the things too that Olivia mentioned in terms of the engagement. So, and you mentioned conservancy. So, any let's say relationship with the Central Park Conservancy?
Yeah, we've met with them and we've interviewed them. They know who we are, and so they've helped us understand some of the challenges that Olivia mentioned, particularly in Central Park. We've also spoken to the folks in Brooklyn from Prospect Park, and we're a part of this broad coalition called the Forest for All Coalition, where we're engaged a whole host of folks who organize and run some of the parks around the city. So this has been a wholehearted effort that involves all these folks.
Nice. And Aalayna, so just tell me too, in terms of your outreach, has there been any pushback, definitive pushback from community members, or no?
From my perspective, I feel like people have been very open to it, and have been actually seeking more information and wanting to know more. And I think that's a huge element that comes with doing this type of work, is that a lot of the people want to know more, but the information either isn't accessible or isn't available or just isn't being looked into. So I think for the most part, the communities want to know what's going on and why trees are being put where they are. So it's just trying to bridge these connections and these types of conversations between the people who are actually doing the planting and the people who are being affected by the planting.
Gotcha. And so, of course, I know about Flint and the water crisis there, but I'm thinking about, let's say, in an urban area like Detroit, is this type of research going on there?
Not that I know of, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is, because I know Detroit right now is going through pretty, I would say like a rebranding, but also it's just gentrification. It's just gentrification.
You know what? Come on, Aalayna. That's right. Rebranding by any other name. We know what it is.
We all know what it is. Like you're adding pretty colors and things like that, which is great.
Yes.
But again, not when it comes at the expense of local Detroiters. You know?
Thank you. And because, my God, didn't I see that happen in New Orleans too?
Maybe.
but who's counting? And I got to say, so Cameron, man, in terms of your medical studies, and I heard from Arnab in terms of, climate was not necessarily something that he was thinking about initially. What about you?
No, it's kind of always been part of the plan. I think it's sort of, from the first moment that I started in medical school and I started seeing patients and going to clinics and communities, we would go to, New York Presbyterian in the main hospital. You would see like certain patients who were having certain things that they were dealing with, but then you would go to like some of the community clinics in Harlem, and then you would see like, why does every single child that I'm seeing, why do they all have asthma?
Wow.
A normal situation for everybody to have like sort of asthma as an additional diagnosis with all of the other things that they're dealing with. And, I've spoken, we actually are, that my main work at We Act is sort of around asthma policy. So I was interviewing community members around sort of their experience with asthma. And a lot of the things that I heard from them is that, they actually didn't know that it wasn't just genetic and that it wasn't normal for sort of everyone in their community and everyone that they know to have sort of just like asthma as a baseline. So that's the barriers that we're dealing with, is that, it's become so normalized and default for our community to be, dealing with not only like, we talk about the sort of the outdoor air pollution from the bus depots and the sewage treatment plants, but a lot of the asthma that we're seeing is like, it's multifactorial, which means like a bunch of different things contribute to it. But a lot of it is like, you know, people having pests in their homes, like the rats and the mice, and all of the fur and the dander and the allergens that those things contribute to are, you know, irritating like little children from like the moment that they're born. They're being hit with all of these different allergens. And then it's also the gas stoves that folks have in their homes. And I know a lot of people, you know, like their gas stove, but, you know, it actually sort of leads to folks having like higher levels of some of these, you know, some of these volatile compounds that are, you know, regulated outside, but there's not actually any regulation for the levels that are safe to deal with inside. So we see like 5, 10, 15, 20 times the safe outdoor levels, and you're just breathing that sort of every time you turn on the stove. So we're doing a lot of advocacy around trying to, you know, educate people around, you know, converting from gas to electricity. Actually, one of the bills that we're trying to pass upstate in this legislative session, essentially what it would do is it would take away, you know, all the extra money that New York State is paying to Con Ed for free to expand like the state's natural gas pipeline, and it would put that money into sort of renewable, community-led solar and green energy projects. So that would be like rooftop solar. That would be stuff like, you know, geothermal in communities, and that would be like, you know, types of energy that are not going to be a detriment to the health of the communities that are actually receiving that energy. So that's, if you've seen me around, you know, Harlem, you know, you likely have seen me doing sort of outreach and campaigning for stuff like that.
Gotcha. Yes, indeed. And please give some major shout outs to Charles, because Charles was pushing solar, baby. Solar. So definitely tell me.
Also, we have to give WEAC its props because, you know, when he mentioned the bus depots and how that's contributed to the issues of asthma in the community, and the work that WEAC did to be able to get hybrid buses to be a thing, not 100%. Just in the buses in our community, but citywide. So we all are breathing a little bit better because of the work that WEAC does. So I just wanted to make sure we underscore that.
Absolutely, yes. Well, I'm making the assumption then, of course, WEAC and also Weill Cornell, in terms of, let's say, supporting, let's say, some of the mayors or the city's initiatives for greening, you guys are behind.
Yeah. We were just talking as a team about this question before this. I can't remember if I've talked to you about this, DJ LeRoy, but in October, the city passed 2 local laws, bills 1065 and 1066. And I can't remember which does which, but they essentially say that the city is going to increase the tree canopy coverage from 22% to 30%. And that's kind of a confusing metric, but basically it means that right now our city has, if you looked above ground at it, 22% of it would be tree cover. And they want to increase that to 30%. And so in needing to do that, you'll have to plant probably 1 million trees again. I know there was the Million Trees campaign that lasted for about 10 years earlier, like when I was a child. So something like that will have to happen again in order to increase the canopy to that level. But then in doing so as well, the city has said that they need to establish a urban forest master plan. So essentially a plan that sets out how they're going to do this, how they're going to make sure that the trees also are distributed equitably, because there are definitely areas that have less trees than others, including parts in Harlem, parts in the South Bronx, these areas that we're talking about asthma just now, where there's high asthma levels. That's also the places that tend to be heat vulnerable and have less tree cover. So the master plan will ultimately try to take in some of those factors as well. But we've been talking with people who are really involved in trees and tree planting in the city, and it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of how do I put this? There hasn't been, I don't know if the city has reached out to these people yet per se, so I don't know
Okay.
how
Yep.
much is going on to make the master plan at the moment, but it is something that is in law, and so we feel as though our research is pretty relevant to it, and so we hope that we can continue to hear about what goes on with that and to inform people on what we find in our project towards that master plan.
Gotcha. And Arnab, so certainly, I guess it's a fairly new institute, and that, of course, is over at Columbia, their Climate Institute there. Any collaboration? Oh, I heard a little chuckle there. But any collaboration or discussion with them?
No, honestly, not at this point. We work closely with some folks from Columbia who helped us, for example, introduce us to you.
Oh.
And I think the school is developing, and we welcome any collaboration. I think this is a problem that can't be solved by one or two people, and we need to have not just the expertise of people who understand scientific ideas, but also understand their communities and the political structures and the power structures that sort of propagate and maintain these problems that we've been talking about. So this is we're more than happy to meet and speak with folks from Columbia, and we do have some of those connections. Beautiful.
Well, I'm going to throw out a couple of names. And Olivia, you actually did meet one when you came to an event over at the Harlem School of the Arts, and that's Professor Brian Smith.
Yes.
But I definitely encourage you, and we're going to make sure that you meet, of course, Barbara Askins, okay, as well as my old mentor, Esther Fuchs. There at Columbia, and we'll see that we get that connection. And Cameron, you are shaking your head, so I guess you know those folks already. Of course, good, all right.
Curtis, I just wanted to say that I always write down the names that you tell me to connect to, and we have a big Excel document called Curtis's Connections.
Wow,
that I keep up to date. I just wanted to let you know every name you say.
They're data mining you.
Oh my God! So then I'll put that out there. So Aalayna, do you have this list as well? Oh, yeah.
Of course I do. It's a long list.
Oh, wow. Well, you know what, NightWatchman? Yes, I find it a little flattering, gratifying, but ooh, man. So I don't know, NightWatchman. You got some rapid fire type stuff or what?
Not really. I've just been enjoying this conversation. I'm really impressed with everybody here and the work you're doing. One of the things I wanted to ask you guys was, one of the, I guess part of the push-pull about creating green spaces and trees is let's face it, real estate interests have a lot of impact in New York City. And if you have a space that could potentially be a green space or a community garden or somewhere where you plant trees, there's always somebody who wants to put up a building and go higher, and the profit margins in taking every little space and creating a building there sometimes is in direct opposition to what we know is it's actually important to have these spaces. New York wouldn't be livable if we didn't have a Central Park in the middle of Manhattan, and if we didn't have a Van Cortlandt Park, and if we didn't have community gardens. And, so how do you guys negotiate that the push and pull between the business interests and the quality of life interests?
Anyone, take it.
Yeah, I can actually speak to that.
Okay,
it's actually one of the projects that we're working on is something called the Community Land Act. And so essentially, if you're familiar with community land trusts, they're essentially a type of organization where it's members of the community come together and they, purchase like a plot of land, and they decide collectively as a community what they want to put there. Based on what the actual needs of the community are, and sort of there's like all these different ways to do it, but essentially with the goal for it to be permanently affordable, like all of the things that, you know, private developers decide to do in order to take advantage of tax breaks. But, you know, we've actually been, you know, pushing for this Community Land Act, which it would do a few different things. But one of the, you know, most impactful things it would do is essentially when the city decides to get rid of, you know, some of the land that it owns, which it does all the time, it would essentially, you know, require the city to prioritize nonprofits and community land trusts that are actually building things that the community wants over, you know, private developers and real estate interests that are sort of just building things that they want. Because, you know, basically under the status quo, like all you have to do as a private developer is say like, hey, I'm going to build this thing, just give me the land for free, and the city will give you whatever you want. And it's not, and it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't create a city that is reflective of the communities that we want to create, and it's not intentional. And so what we've actually been doing, you know, in addition to trying to like, you know, advocate towards our city council members and to get this Community Land Act passed, is we've actually been literally walking around the entirety of Northern Manhattan.
Wow.
Taking a survey of every single plot of land in Northern Manhattan, looking at vacant lots, looking at abandoned buildings, looking at, you know, sort of underutilized spaces, parking lots, stuff like that. And so that we could give that information to community land trusts in Northern Manhattan that are already operating, so that, you know, they could start to organize around, all right, this is the land that we want to get from the city. This is the plan that we're going to make for it, so that when, you know, when we do get this passed, that we'll be able to hit the ground running and start building, you know, affordable housing, affordable, you know, business spaces, but also like you said, like parks and gardens and green spaces that the community actually would be able to benefit from.
Gotcha. And NightWatchman, while we both agree we love Central Park, right? Definitely loves it. However, you do know that at the expense of moving some black folk from what was called Seneca Village, we created Central Park. How do you feel about that, brother?
Well, I mean, I feel bad about that, but you know, the use of eminent domain has always been an issue in communities of color, and it's still an issue in Harlem. We still see the eminent domain moves that Columbia has made in West Harlem, and so it's something that you know, we need to be mindful of in terms of how we align ourselves with our elected officials to you know, fight for the things that actually benefit our community. I think we're at a stage where we kind of know more about these things, but they still happen. And even you know, this New York is a complex city, and the people who want to kind of move things around the chessboard have some real interesting ways of making things happen. I think the last thing that bothered me was how they used what was it? Was EB1 financing?
EB5
financing on the west side, and somehow they managed to gerrymander it so that they were able to take tax benefits from East Harlem to build that area in the Hudson Yards.
Whoa.
You know, I mean, how do, you know, we don't even have a defense for that, because by the time that stuff happens, you know, we hear about it years later, and it's like, how did that go down? And, you know, who on whose watch did this happen?
Wow.
So,
I got thank you for that. Well, NightWatchman, what we're gonna do, we're gonna have our rapid fire here and there.
Lightning round. Yes,
lightning round. Get ready. Woo, yes. So okay. We will start with you, Olivia. Yes. Some closing thoughts, and also and 10 to 20 years, because you're a young pup now, we know this already. What do you envision Harlem and Northern Manhattan to be like?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, I feel as though I'm going to answer from what I heard from the people I've talked to in Harlem. So since I haven't lived in Harlem myself, but I think one of the most inspiring things that I've heard from someone is that they envision this intergenerational engagement with urban greening. And so tree planting and being in parks as being something that is enjoyed by folks of all ages. And I think we agreed in the conversation that we had that the moments where you feel the most, I think, empowerment to make things better in the world is when you look at children and when you think about the world that you want to create for children. And so we definitely are thinking about that in our research too, and how we can engage younger people, the people who will see the trees that we plant today as big, huge trees that provide the most benefits for them when they are of middle age. So I hope that in the future, Harlem has intergenerational involvement in tree planting and that they can reap the benefits in the future.
Beautiful. Well said. Arnab, for your young children, man, what do you see? And also, might you take some of this expertise that you've really honed here and also bring that to Australia?
Oh, I mean, that'd be lovely if I could do that. I would love to at some point. I think this is a global problem. We're all experiencing it in various ways, and yes, definitely.
Nice.
I think for my young kids, really, and any young child living in New York City, I just don't want them to have to think about the effects of climate change. I want them to be able to live their life to the best of their ability, to live healthily, and do what they want to do without this grave concern that I think some of us have, that we may not be able to do these things in the future. So simply that.
Very nice. Aalayna, do tell. What do you see? 10 to 20 years. Let's see.
I want to see Harlem green and I want to see Harlem black. Simple. Simple.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
more trees, more black people outside. Like I
Wow.
hope that there'll be more spaces for us to enjoy. And a lot of more joy that comes from trees.
Well said. Well said. All right. Cameron, man, tell us, please.
I would love to see a Harlem where, the kids can go outside, they can breathe, folks can work, folks can afford to stay in this community.
Yes.
Harlem is beautiful, but I think I think I would love to see people be able to fall in love with this place and stay and afford to stay. And the generations that have lived here forever can afford to pass on the culture that is defined like this neighborhood.
Well said. Well said. NightWatchman, you got any closing thought, a question?
Yes. Well, I feel more optimistic for the future because of this panel and knowing that we've passed on Curtis's Rolodex to a younger generation.
Wow. I'm getting you, NightWatchman. I'm going to get you, buddy.
Come on, that's a good thing. We put it in good hands. So we've been listening to Soul Lounge Primetime on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem, and live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. You can find us on Monday nights at 7 p.m. on the radio and 8 o'clock live streaming on your favorite platforms that we're on. And you can also find us on some podcast platforms as well. So thank you for our guests, and you're all, as Curtis likes to say, you all will be invited back to the cookout. We'll probably try to have it in one of our
parks,
spaces.
Baby. That's right. And Cameron, a barbecue that won't have a negative effect on our breathing, will it?
Sometimes we gotta make sacrifices.
Very good.
Well
very
said,
good.
Well said.
Yes, indeed. You guys have been excellent. So you will be coming back. All right.
Thank
you so much. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
You got it. Take care, y'all.
All right. Take care.